next director position? Are we going to have to move our management positions in such a way on the pay scale that it really is equivalent to what our director positions were necessary to be, to get the applicant that we need? Because we can't underestimate the challenges that we're going to face because of the growth potential and what that's going to mean from the infrastructure, from the electric, from all the utilities combined. And we don't want to be faced with the title restricting who wants that position. You know, I wouldn't put Brian on the spot, but I wouldn't assume that Brian was looking for a manager level position after his last director position. You don't have to answer, but that's an assumption I think is pretty safe. And I don't think we want to be in that same situation. We want people that look at the longevity of the position, realize the income potential. While we already know that we fall behind when we compare it to other cities with the same level of things, we don't want to put ourselves further behind because we aren't hiring the level that these people want to achieve and really the results that we want to receive. And that's where you have to look at the structure and say, yes, perhaps a manager could do the job, but perhaps a director could do the job better, and we would receive better rewards for the investment in that position.
And Heath, I'll piggyback on what you just said. I don't think we want to be a farm team for Johnson County.
No.
And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, we have been. I think if we want to hire a utilities director who's going to be here for the long run, we want them to stick around for the long run and not look for another better opportunity 2 years, 3 years down the road. We don't need that. Turnover is just as deadly in terms of efficiencies as anything else, and we don't want to have that kind of churn. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are we basically down to 1 and 2? I believe that's what I'm seeing.
I think so.
Okay. At which point, I mean, everybody's seen what my recommendation was. If there's anybody here that wants to talk about creating a board of public utilities to manage the 3 utilities, you know, now's the opportunity to bring the idea forward.
Well, I'll speak a little bit about that since it's something I've actually cheerleaded for in the past. You know, and maybe it's old-fashioned, but I looked at what was working. And outside legality of some of these things that I think could have been resolved, and which I have no doubt that we'd be able to resolve if we went this way in the future, I felt that independent board managed their business in a way that served the ratepayers the best. I think it could be done in a way that actually could accommodate the budget necessities. From an HR perspective, I think if some people have wanted to paint that in a direction, it either has to be all or none. There still can be collaborative efforts, even with an independent council, that I think could take advantage of all the city's resources and still leave it as something that has an independent merit, which at the end of the day, I think it makes it a better looking position from a director's perspective. I think it's more attractive. I think we've proven it to possibly run a little bit more efficiently, and actually, possibly, I think, you know, Mr. Mayor kind of argued that it ran better than it may have ever had in the past, short of some of the legality issues that we could have possibly fixed in a different manner. So that's why I think we go this direction, and I think from looking towards the future, bringing those all in together, having the focus and the energy done there, separating public utilities, or not public utilities, but public works, freeing it of the burden of maybe having to manage those things might allow it to do its job better and work as a city department. I think it actually feeds all of the mouths in a little bit more efficient way. So that's really where I think the BPU comes into play and becomes the solution I think takes us forward and is the best management tool for what I think the city's assets and initiatives are going to be moving forward.
I have one quick question for Mr. Dank, because I unfortunately was not able to make that work session when we were talking about the options. And I know that there was exchange between yourself and the mayor of McPherson regarding the McPherson model. And I know there's been a lot made about the McPherson model, both by Colin Hanson at KMU as well as the individuals. I'll just ask you point blank, because I think there was a question about the legality of the budget process with regard to the BPU at McPherson. What were the specific situations within that model did you have dispute with? And I'm not going to speak from a financial perspective. I got another question for Laura in that regard. But what do you think might have been the issues that you saw looking at that model?
You know, I looked over McPherson's ordinance, and I saw 4 legal concerns that I was able to identify with their ordinance. One was that they delegate legislative determinations, and I can read you the language here, that are reserved to this governing body to their board. I'll read that language here in a second. Number two, they delegate budget. They purport to give budgetary authority to this board, and I'll talk about that here in a second as well. Then bonding, they basically put a mandate on the governing body under their charter ordinance that the governing body shall pass bonding issuances whenever their appointed board dictates that they deem it's appropriate.
Okay.
And I know I've talked with the city's bond counsel, Dottie Riley, about that as well, and she's got tremendous heartache over anything like that. And then the fourth one is just the qualifications. It's kind of some bizarre language. I think probably the situation with McPherson is, I mean, that charter ordinance or an iteration of it has been in existence for 70 years. And so I think some of these things, just over the lapse of time and with the changing aspects of the law, maybe haven't been.
So, do you feel that they may be, I'm not saying grandfathered, but from the standpoint of legal challenge, if there were any, would that be taken into consideration, or is it just a situation where, I mean, obviously the law was here, and now it's here, you know, what kind of, and I know this doesn't really have a lot of bearing on what we're talking about here, but I wanted, because obviously some of us have been discussing using the McPherson model, modifying it slightly to fit our needs, and then moving forward. On taking into consideration those three, and I'm not going to go into the qualification stuff for now, because that's probably something nebulous, but going into those three, other than budget, all right? Now, we're talking about the bonding language, that's something that could very, very easily be modified. But from the standpoint of that ordinance that McPherson has, do you see anything else? Obviously, budget's going to have to come back inside the organization, and it is now. It has to stay inside the organization from a statute perspective. But from the other two, what do you see as fixes?
Sure. Let me just, I guess.
What was that first one again?
And let me take a little bit of a deeper dive on that. The delegation of legislative determinations, the language from Section 9 of the McPherson ordinance states, "It shall be the duty of the governing body of the city, when requested by the Board of Public Utilities, to enact such ordinances as may be necessary for the protection of the water and electric utilities." Okay, so basically what that says is, when their appointed board deems that it is necessary for the protection of the water and electric utilities, which is a very vague and probably broadly construed term, that it shall be the duty of the governing body to enact ordinances. You know, that's an improper delegation of what you all are elected to do. Sure, you're elected to make the determination as to when or not you're going to vote to create laws that govern the city of Gardner, to pass ordinances. So what you're doing there is you're delegating that legislative determination to someone who's not elected, to someone who's appointed, and I've got real heartache about that. That same provision then also goes on and talks about the same duty exists, that whenever in the judgment of their Board of Public Utilities, they deem it necessary to institute condemnation proceedings. So again, it's the legal duty to initiate those condemnation proceedings. Condemnation, the Kansas Eminent Domain Procedure Act, is not a non-uniform statute. It is uniform in nature, and that's something that you cannot home rule out from under. So those are kind of the two pieces of that delegation of legislative determination that gave me real heartache.
Okay.